You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. Alongside Mike Chappell and Matt Adams, I'm Dave Griffiths. Glad to have you along as the Colts are in the playoffs. If the season were to end
season
today.
started
Exactly.
today.
Hey, but that's better than not being in the top 7 of the AFC, chat.
It's better than being the Buffalo Bills.
Exactly. Oh, my
gosh. Which is unbelievable, but that's where we are.
Where the AFC is right now is crazy because you have teams like the Colts, and then the Texans are right behind them, tied there, and then the Bills, the Bengals. If some of these teams get in where other of these teams get knocked out, it just goes to show you that the NFL is insane. And
it's like that in NFC as well. Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
And with the Bengals, you can understand with Joe Burrow being what he was this year. The Bills, I mean, they're like Josh Allen's been there all year. Like he's starting for them every game, but they haven't lost their franchise quarterback. It's just stuff happens in this league that takes you down a peg every once in a while.
Yeah, it's. People say, well, the Colts schedule this, that, and the other. No, they lost their starting quarterback, in week 5? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They've had Jonathan Taylor for maybe 4 games when he's been full bore. So it's really incredible what they've done. And you play who you play. Mm-hmm. But the idea of, and the Bills' schedule, don't they come out of their bye and they play at Kansas City?
Yep.
Yeah, their schedule's brutal.
It's brutal. And so, I would love to see the Colts get in. Yes, because we cover them and it gives us more to talk about, but just for being able to deal with what they've dealt with and make that first step in whatever the Steichen era is going to be. And we'll talk about it later on. The schedule is conducive to these guys doing something good.
It is, for sure. And I think there's some value to that for a team and for a franchise. Like it's not just top 5 pick or Super Bowl and everything in the middle is
positive
garbage.
Reinforcement.
And especially if you're a new coach to a place trying to establish a culture with, as Shane always talks about, his 4 pillars. Like just getting players to buy in and be on the same page and be united. Like making the playoff.
How do you buy in when you're 4-12-1 last
exactly.
year? You just want the thing over. Mm-hmm. But like you said, this is your need. This is how we're going to do it, and then on top of that, you see some success from that through all of this. I think it's really, really valuable as opposed to every win you have. It's a worse draft pick for you. You deal with that in April.
But I do believe that resilience is one of Shane's 4 pillars, and they've had to be resilient this year. They're going to have to be resilient yet again for at least the next couple weeks as Jonathan Taylor hurt his thumb against the Buccaneers, and the team didn't.
Have you seen a play that?
No.
I've gone back and looked, and it's really hard.
Zack Moss said yesterday that he thinks Taylor said something to him at halftime, so I think it was in the first half.
That's what I had read.
But boy, I went back and looked at every one of his carries, and there was one 5-yard gain that he got up and grimaced a little bit, but that could have been anything because running backs, you get hit.
Right.
But, this came up after the game, and the owners told a few of us they expect 2 to 3 weeks. That's why there's no IR right now.
Well, that's gone well for them this year, not putting players on IR.
Let me see Juju Brents and Braden Smith and goodness gracious, Jelani Woods.
Yep.
Who thought it was going to be the entire season or whatever. But what's really amazing though is now Taylor's season, this journey, 11-month journey. It started and has ended to this point with surgeries. So it's just been such a strange year for him.
And Taylor probably, Matt, had his best game since returning just this past week against the Bucs too, which was one of the better rush defenses in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean that was the thing that just and I understand the Colts came out kind of throwing to try to loosen things up there in the middle, but still, when the Buccaneers knew they were running, they were still able to run the ball with Taylor and also to some measure with Zack Moss as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think Taylor had 6.6 yards a carry, something like that. Moss was up around 7, so they were able to get things done last week.
That game was how they really want to do things. Yes, Taylor's your guy. What was he, 15 for 91? Is that what it was?
Yep.
But then Moss had his handful, and it's really opportunistic or whatever, or fortuitous that you're losing arguably your best offensive player, yet you've got your leading rusher to step in and play. And I tell you, since the last 4 games of last year, when Taylor was out, Zack Moss has been one of the top probably 5 running backs in the league, yardage-wise. So it's really pretty impressive. And it's I really enjoy talking to Zack Moss. He's such a grounded guy. And he always gets his little shots in when people say, well, you're sort of like no one knows about you. And are you prepared for a heavy or a load? He says, I was a 3-year starter at Utah. I never came off the field.
Right.
So he has been. And
He's like, I've been here before.
Right.
Yeah.
He said, this isn't like you just bringing a guy in and let's see what you can do. So, and he's got a legitimate shot at a 1,000-yard season. Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't exactly the 1987 Oklahoma State team where Thurman Thomas is your leading rusher and defenses don't want to knock him out because there's this guy, Barry Sanders, who's working his way up as his backup. But nevertheless, like Jonathan Taylor, Zack Moss might have been the best 1-2 running back duo in the league. If there is anybody that you want to step in, any backup in the league, I think Zack Moss is probably the guy because he's had a good season so far and even just last week as he stepped in. I mean, he looked fresh last week, which understandably so because Taylor had gotten himself a bit of an increased workload and they had the bye week over the past couple weeks. So he should be rested and rejuvenated for the stretch run of this season.
No, and he's 10th in the league in rushing still. He missed the first game of the season, as we all recall. And then, I won't necessarily say workload reduced, but he's split carries now with JT, but he's still maintained a pretty high position in the league. And he is averaging 4.8 yards per carry on the season, which is really fantastic.
What's going to be interesting to see is the first 4 games that Moss played when Taylor was out and then just coming back, he was a running game. So how will they try to maximize Moss without running him in the ground? Because right now the backup is Trey Sermon, and you
don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah.
And it's, let's say, heaven forbid that Moss goes down, and then people are criticizing the Colts. Well, you didn't have enough depth at running back. No, it'll be your third guy.
Right.
So how will you maximize Moss and still not give him 25 carries? Because I think the Titans, the first game was at 23 for 165. That's a lot of carries. It just is. But you still have to. The blueprint moving forward has got to be run the ball. And then allow Minshew to make those 4 or 5 plays and not 10 or 12 plays. And this. And again, maybe I'll be proven wrong, but this is a big loss with Taylor. It just is because he's their best offensive player. But this season was always going to be about can Minshew get them to the playoffs. It was on him. It is on him, and it's up to you what your comfort level is on the playoff hopes being in Minshew's hands, but in my mind they are.
Yeah, relying on the run game is what we'll look at going forward. It wasn't exactly the game plan last week against the Buccaneers. They came out, they threw it 41 times, they ran it only 27 times. So the plan, especially early, was to kill them with the short pass. And you saw Michael Pittman catch 10 balls for about 100 yards. And
13 targets.
He was the one that was making that offense go in that game, really the unheralded hero in that game because he doesn't make the end zone and he's not making all these big plays, but he's gaining yards early in downs to make third down manageable. Yep. He's making third down conversions.
Fourth and one conversion.
Yeah, huge catch.
And taking big hits in so doing at the same time. He's as tough a dude as they come, really. And he had a very important game in this win.
I had a chance to talk to him today, but I guess before practice, and it was about his comfort level being the guy. He says, I pray for that every day. He said, literally, I pray for every day to be, that guy. And he's embraced it, and he's got like 117 targets, 115 targets, which is like 4th most in the league. And he's either tied. I should have read the notes quicker.
Golly, chap.
But he's either tied or passed Marvin Harrison for most 8-catch games in a season. And it's just amazing. He's got 75, 76 catches, and that's with one game with 1 and one game with 2. The one game was memorable for the maybe I'm not part of this offense, which he regrets.
Right, absolutely.
He regrets.
Speaking in emotion is not always in accuracy.
Correct. And I'm looking forward to our podcast in January when we start talking about is he the guy that you're going to make your guy contract-wise. It's going to be a fascinating discussion. he's going to get $25 million a year.
Probably.
He will.
Somebody will. Somebody will pay him. If it's not the Colts, somebody will. Yep.
And he knows. Worst case for him, it'll be the franchise tag, which will probably be $25 million.
Mm-hmm.
But as we've always said, if it's easy to walk away from players, Shaq Leonard, you just cut bait. But when it comes to cutting a guy, who do you replace him with? So I think it's going to be a fascinating discussion, not to the level of the Bears and Justin Fields on what do you got.
Yeah.
But Pittman is he's not everything you want, but he's a lot of what you need, and it's going to be a fascinating discussion personnel-wise.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff that's going to happen this offseason. We'll get to Kyler Murray in Arizona is another really interesting one. What's going on? They owe him $200 million, and they're probably going to have one of the top picks in the draft, and et cetera, et cetera. But
it's really and that's why, like with quarterbacks, you better be right.
Yeah.
The Carolina and Bryce Young.
Jeez, Carolina.
You have no idea.
No clue.
None what you've got. And there's not a heck of a lot you can do about it because of what it took to get that. And what is it? They fired Frank. They fired guys. I mean, Tepper's on like his what is it? Fifth or sixth,
including interim head coaches like sixth.
That's just no. It's just no way. So, but no, we'll have a lot to talk about here. League wide, it's just going to be Aaron Rodgers for crying out loud. He's not going to play.
Who do you think? I'm curious. Do you think that the Carolina Panthers know more about Bryce Young right now, or if the Jacksonville Jaguars knew more about Trevor Lawrence in his rookie year with Urban Meyer?
That's a good question. That's a really good question because Urban Meyer, Lawrence, that was almost a wasted rookie year.
It was, but I think think they knew more still.
I feel like we saw more from Lawrence.
Maybe this is just like being recency caught bias. Prisoner of the moment, but I just think they know nothing about Bryce Young at all.
How could you? Could you? Now you fired the head coach. You've gotten rid of the coordinator. You fired the quarterback coach. And
yeah, that's good.
And you're concerned about his development. Oh, really?
Jeez, really?
So it's really it's funny. We all so many times we focus on Colts issues because we're here,
right?
And we see them every day. There are other teams that are in so much worse shape because you just don't know. And if you mess up the number one pick in the draft, it kills you for 3 years, 4 years, because you're stuck with that pick. And unless who was it, Arizona, where they drafted Josh Rosen, and then the next year they got Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
But then you get to Kyler Murray, and then it's time to give him the big contract. And like I mentioned with Pittman, you're almost with a quarterback. You're almost sabotage into having to give him the big contract because if not him, who? So, but
that's why Daniel Jones got that contract.
No question.
The Giants,
because they didn't know what Plan B was.
Right.
Well, sometimes Plan A is not very good.
Right.
So, but it's fascinating, and I think as we've talked, we have seen more than enough to believe that Anthony Richardson is right for this franchise. Is Stroud going to be better? I don't know. And if he is, fine. If Richardson does what the Colts think he can do and what we saw in 173 snaps, I have every reason to believe the Colts are in good shape at quarterback moving forward.
They certainly believe they are right now. So we'll give them the benefit of the doubt until we see otherwise on the field, and we will not be seeing otherwise.
He's in the locker room. He's back with the team.
Yes.
He's got I passed him in the locker room today. He's got that arm in a sling, and God, he's so big. He's such a big kid.
Yeah, let's just hope that bigness leads to fewer injuries in the future. Am I right? Defense has been turning it around in terms of the pass rush the past couple weeks. We saw that really under a microscope with the Buccaneers. 6 sacks against Tampa Bay, and I think Tampa came into that game with only allowing 20 on the year.
Right.
Yeah, so it was what they had not done all year. Like they got pressure from a lot of different areas. They got pressure from 2 sacks for Samson Ebukam specifically. He's having a career year.
Quietly
here.
A career. I mean, quietly, but
yes, but still,
that's what you want from him.
He started out strong, and he had a little bit of a lull, and now he's back on the upswing. So that's good for them.
1 sack for Kwity Paye, who again started out strong, had a sack in each of his first 3 games. Now he's back on the stat sheet there. Isaiah Land, his first sack in the NFL, the undrafted rookie who they claimed off of waivers from the Dallas Cowboys this year. The former Florida A&M Rattler, strike, and strike again, go Rattlers. And also Tyquan Lewis and a half sack each for Dayo Odangbo.
Tyquan Lewis is he's a guy that you root for, the stuff he's been through. He's not a stud player, but boy, he's a rotational player. That's what's kind of cool. I would still rather have as a pass rush a guy. I know this guy is going to give me whatever, but they're doing this by committee, and I think I saw that they're one of two teams. They and the Dolphins are the only teams with, is it 5 guys with 4 or 5 guys with 5 sacks, 4 guys with 5 sacks, whatever it is. So it's coming in bunches, as a lot of times it does, but they're doing it by committee without having that one guy who's just the catalyst for the pass rush.
Yep, and you're going to have to get after quarterbacks if you want to have some success. That can make a average to decent team beat a good to great team.
Right.
Like if you just hassle the quarterback all day, and if that's something that you find something that works, if Gus Bradley is able to cook something up that can get past a good offensive line like they saw last week in Tampa Bay, if they find something that works, like the offense did, finding something that works with the short passing game and then running it very, very efficiently, averaging 5.5 yards per carry against one of the best rushing defenses in the NFL. Like if the coaches can find the scheme that beats you, then like I said, a decent team can beat a good or a great team. In that sense.
And it helps that still growing secondary.
Yep.
When you get a pass
my
rush.
goodness, yes.
I was just going to say, Mike, 4 Colts players have at least 5 sacks.
Right.
So you've got Buckner, Kwity Paye, Ebukam, and then Odengbo.
Right, and I think Miami's the only other team that has that. So they got a chance to have a couple guys having double digits. And we've talked before, too. I think it's great that Buck has been like their best pass rush guy, numbers-wise and impact-wise. But that shouldn't be the case. Your 3 technique tackle should not be that guy. So if he can get help, it's just going to make his game stronger. And the more you watch Buck play, my goodness, he just impacts everything. And if they can when they get back Grover Stewart next week, and we'll talk about it, this run defense has just not been very good the last 5 games.
Right.
By the way, that's when Grover's not been there.
Right.
And we've got Derrick Henry coming up, so this will be a really big test defensively.
No doubt. Speaking of decisions in the offseason, another one, talking about Kwity Paye, if they're going to pick up his 5th-year option for...
Have you seen enough? I don't know.
I don't know about a 5th year for a defensive end, but we'll see. I mean, like I said, like I've said on this podcast, he could be Jabal Sheard, and that's fantastic. Like a really good, strong, set-the-edge defensive end. Like if you draft someone in the first round, maybe you want more than that, but at the end of the day, you want players like Kwity Paye has been on the field. And hey, he has 5 sacks right now. He looks like he's going to have a career number.
If he ends up with 8 or 9...
Yeah. I mean, you might have to give him that 5th-year option and lock him in at that number, because at the next year, if he has the same or even gets even better, that number's going to go up again. So again, stuff to talk about in the offseason.
Well, because Grover Stewart, free agent, Kenny Moore, free agent. Yep. They got a lot of guys and a lot of decisions to make, but for the here and now, this team is doing whatever it takes to win. It's not pretty a lot of times. I don't think it's going to be pretty. They're not going to have that 30-10 game in the fourth quarter. But as long as you find a way, they just add up wins and losses, not how you got there.
They have 3 wins in a row right now. They have improved to 6-5 on the season. They are second in the AFC South via tiebreaker over the Houston Texans, because they got that win over them in Houston earlier this year. And for now, the 7 seed in the AFC playoffs. This week's opponent, the Tennessee Titans, just 4-7 on the year, trying to get back in the playoff hunt, but right now certainly playing from the outside looking in, especially with all the teams that are kind of in the mix there at 7-4, 6-5. But they've also lost 3 of their last 4. All 4 of their wins this year have come at home, where they play this weekend in Nashville, where the Colts will face them. They're 4-1 at home and 0-6 on the road. Yikes. Not road warriors in the slightest bit. But a new quarterback, rookie Will Levis, had a very good debut, throwing 4 touchdowns in Atlanta, but has not cracked 200 yards, Matt, you notice, in the last 3 games. We talked a little bit about Will Levis earlier, saying that after that game, I mean, the Titans had to think, thought, yes, we got somebody. Well, hold on, tap the brakes. And maybe I should have tapped the brakes a little bit when I was talking about him too. Like, he showed promise for sure, and he has some physical tools, but it's been a little bit slower ever since that first dynamite game for him in the NFL.
I was listening to, I think, JMV, and he was talking to the one of the Pro Football Focus guys, and they were talking about that first game was great, but then it's sort of leveled off because you're seeing some of those things from Kentucky that sort of trailed Will Levis into the NFL, and that was sort of holding on to the ball too long, taking sacks that he shouldn't have, that sort of thing. So that's, sometimes players are who they are a little bit, and the league finds that out eventually. And just, 5 games into his career is way too early to start saying one thing or the other. But you do see some trends starting to develop a little bit.
But this is a kind of guy, you want to hurry up every quarterback, but for a rookie, you really want to get him thinking and be hesitant. And that's what these guys have done with, again, 16 sacks in 3 games during this win streak. That's what you want. And yes, the sacks are important. It's funny when people say that sacks aren't a big deal. It's because your team's not sacking the quarterback.
You're trying to talk yourself into your guys. Yeah.
Well, your pressures, we're getting near his. No. But this is the guy that if you can speed things up and make him do things that he's not ready to do, which first starts with getting on Derrick Henry and not allowing him to be who he's been against these guys. But this is the kind of quarterback that you can really affect with pressure and sacks. That's
what we've said every year that the Colts have faced Bill Belichick with a young quarterback, and last year just comes to mind right away with Allen. I'm sorry to bring it up, but that's what you do against young quarterbacks. You confuse them, and no one's better than him at doing it. So you're trying to get some semblance of that this weekend. He has a pretty good wide receiver in DeAndre Hopkins, who had a very good game. You mentioned Zach Moss running wild here, Matt, and DeAndre Hopkins catching wild. We'll make it a thing. That's fine.
Sure, why not?
8 catches, 140 yards against the Colts first time out. But like every time I see the Titans now, and maybe this is because I grew up an Eagles fan and I still follow a lot of Eagles accounts. Like, I cannot imagine the trajectory of a franchise going so much in a different direction that by one weird move than the Titans trading away A.J. Brown. Like, that move for them really pivoted the Titans to being like, even though he wasn't like you were still a Derrick Henry led offense, like a tough, grinded out, beat you to a pulp type offense. A.J. Brown is a tough, big, physical receiver. Like, people look at him and think like that might not be the first thought that comes to mind, that it's the like he makes big plays, he's more flashy and all that, but he was everything. Like, to me, he was everything they would want in a receiver. A big, tough, strong guy that could still beat you to a pulp in the receiving game. And they traded him away for a first-round pick. And it is still mind-boggling to me why they did that.
They weren't willing to give him what
$20 million. Right. And now it's $25 million for Michael Pittman Jr. Yeah.
That's almost being tone deaf to where the league is.
Yes.
Yes, you're built around Derrick Henry, but he's on the downside. He just is. And the league is a passing league. And you look at so many places, there's no question in my mind that A.J. Brown has been the difference in Philly.
I'd give up 2 first-round picks for him.
Stephon Diggs in Buffalo.
Yep.
I mean, that's why I say next year with Richardson coming back, you need that guy, whoever it is. I don't miss A.J. Brown at all.
No.
Tennessee, that went along. Wasn't that the same day or the same week where Baltimore got rid of Marquise Brown?
Yes, it was.
So it was they weren't willing to pay top-end money to a receiver, and that's where the league is right now.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's just a quick rabbit trail off topic.
How many rabbit holes did we go down?
That was me. That's entirely on me. So I'll fully admit that.
We're all about accountability.
Well, yeah, exactly. We touched on Zach Moss that first game against Tennessee. He had that 160-yard run that he broke off in that game, so that certainly helped him out. But even if you take that 60-yard run out, it was 22 carries for like 100 yards. So even take off the big run, it was still a fantastic day for him.
Really good against them.
Yeah, then you add the big run, and it's just an electric day that completely led the offense.
I was curious, so I checked on it, and that 165 is still the 4th best running game of the season this year by anybody. So, and I think there's been 21 games of 122 yards, and he's had 2 of them. So, again, they need to run the ball, but what he's doing is amazing, and it's kind of crazy how it's going to be Moss and Pittman against Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins, and which quarterback can take care of their business more efficiently.
You have Andre Johnson on the mind, already trying to prepare your case against Andre Johnson.
I was talking to Reggie about that today, and he and I keep going back and forth. I think, Andre Johnson, who former Colt.
Yeah.
Which people
former
forget.
Colt Andre Johnson.
Yes.
You could still respect the man in his career, but not put him above everyone else who has been waiting in line.
Correct.
Yes.
Calvin Johnson, yes. Andre Johnson, no.
No, and no disrespect intended.
None.
Once again. Well, I'm sure that's something that'll come up over the next
Correct.
couple of weeks as well. So that was, by the way, so if people don't know what I'm referring to this week, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, of which Chap is a voter, just announced its 25 modern era semifinalists, and we have Reggie Wayne in that group, Dwight Freeney in that group, Robert Mathis in that group. And if you're looking at all of them this year, with the new inductees or the new class is always the one that you look at, see if there's any guys that jump to the front of the line. Julius Peppers will be on that list, a possible.
Antonio Gates.
Antonio Gates as a tight end is jumping to the top of that list because
that leaves three.
Yes, exactly. So there's two right there that are probably first-time inductees because of what they meant to their position over the years. Like Julius Peppers, people forget, like he wasn't always, I think maybe he had 1 or 2 years you consider him the best or one of the best in the league, but he was always just so consistent, like 12 sacks a year. He did that for year after year after year after year. And he did it in Carolina. He did it in Chicago. He did it wherever he was. And he ended up in his career in top 5 in the NFL in sacks in the history of the league. So yeah, he'll be there. He will get the nod. Antonio Gates will 90% likely get that nod too. But yeah, like you said, Chap, there's kind of 3 positions there. There's a list of wide receivers that keeps adding to it because, I mean, Steve Smith is added to the list this year.
He can barely get his sniff, though. We can't get him in the room.
Right.
Anquan Bolden, quality player.
Right. That's
Hines Ward.
Anquan Bolden, one of the most underrated receivers of his era, in my opinion. Yeah.
But that's why I keep imploring to our other selectors, and a lot of us do, is we got to get somebody in.
Yeah, you got to get a
receiver in because we keep kicking the can down the road, and before you know it, Jason Witten's going to be up, and then Larry Fitzgerald's going to be up, and then all of a sudden you got Reggie and these guys 10 years they've not gotten in. So that's another podcast for the future.
I'm sure we can dive deep into that. And then the Freeney Mathis debate is always a good one. If you had to pick one, luckily for Colts fans, they did not have to pick one over the years here in Indianapolis. They had both of them, including the Syracuse legend Dwight Freeney there, who revolutionized the position with in some ways he really did.
It is funny because even we didn't really talk about it, but Ebukam, I said he had a Mathis-like strip sack. Okay, because I remember that's what Robert Mathis did best. When you see a guy, a defensive end or lineman, do a spin move, almost always on the broadcast they reference Dwight Freeney.
I watched Zach Moss do a spin move, and I'm thinking Freeney.
Yep,
Freeney on offense.
It's funny how Jonathan Taylor he keeps bringing up the spin move. Like he's in love with Zach Moss's spin move.
I'm trying to have him teach me that spin move
over and over again. It's just I think just to keep going down this rabbit trail here, it must be so unnatural for a running back to add a new move after playing. In Jonathan Taylor's case, he's been playing since Pee Wee. There's got to be so much muscle memory into what goes into his running game and his running habits. And if you're trying to perfect things and tweak things, like you can make small changes, I think, like Tiki Barber did with how, I think that's a famous one, with carrying the ball higher to try to eliminate the fumbles, which worked really well for him. But to add an entirely new move to like your war chest and to recognize in a game when to use that's got to be so freaking
hard.
difficult to do. And so like Taylor says this, like I think part of it is tongue in cheek, just recognizing how good this move that Zach Moss is that he has, that Jonathan Taylor's never had any semblance of throughout his career. And it's more just a nod to how good it is than to him actually probably adding it at some time. But if he ever does, you can bet that's the first question out of the gates post-game, Jonathan Taylor, if he's ever able to use a spin move.
That's what was so discouraging about the broken thumb, is because, again, I thought this last game was the best he's been.
Yep.
And that 17-yard run where there was nothing there, and he made himself skinny and somehow got through the line. Then the next play he scored on power. Mm-hmm. So it's just unfortunate. But, yeah, it's just going to be hard. There's so many quarterbacks coming out of the draft, and they've got flaws in their mechanics. Well, we can fix that. No, after you're in a game, your mind goes back to this is how I do it. And you just can't change. Freeney did the spin move since high school.
Right.
It was part of who he was. Robert Mathis sort of picked it up.
Right.
But you're kind of, they are who they thought they were, they were. So Very interesting, but again, that's another rabbit hole. It's another podcast that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, there's a reason that like different players have these iconic moves. Like Reggie White had his club. You know there's not too many players who can let the 300-pound offensive lineman.
Save this content for February.
Okay.
All
Sorry,
right, guys.
Yes.
Well,
Okay.
the Hall of Fame is we decide we cut to the final 15 in mid-December, and then we decide this in January, so we can't wait till February.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah.
We'll keep sprinkling it in.
Exactly. We'll wait for when the Colts are in the playoffs there in January, right? Where
that would be cool. I mean, it's not being homerish. It's just
it's a reality right now. Like I said,
yes, it is.
I did not think at any point in the season, whether going into the season, whether Richardson was the quarterback or whether Minshew played significant minutes, I did not think we would be on the cusp of December and talking about the Colts playing meaningful football. I just did not believe that was going to be the case.
Well, the meaningful football was expected that Richardson would be getting invaluable experience.
Right.
While you were going 5 and whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And Vegas didn't expect that either because the number at 6.5 for their win total. They are 1 win away and an entire month plus left of the season in order to pass that goal. Let's dive into the offensive and defensive rankings for the Colts and Titans entering this week's matchup. The game will be broadcast at 1 p.m., airing on CBS 4 here in central Indiana. The Titans are only averaging 16.8 points per game this season. That is 27th in the NFL. It has been slow going for them on that side of the ball. The Colts, though, 8th in the league, still in that top 10, averaging 24.5 points per game, increasing that number a little bit this week after scoring 27 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Passing yards, Titans still near the bottom of the barrel, 26th in the league, averaging less than 200 yards per game, only 181. The Colts are 18th, just in the middle of the barrel there, 220 yards passing per game. Rushing yards, Titans, like you think they're a big, bad rushing team, but they are still 21st in the league, in the bottom half in the league in rushing yards, averaging about 100 yards per game and 4.3 yards per rush, rather. The Colts all the way up at 11th in the league. So if you're saying, hey, which is the running team, in your head, you might think, oh, the Titans. Well, the Colts are a little bit better of a running team this year, averaging 121 yards.
Look at that home and away split, though.
Per game. But, yes, as Matt points out, the home split for the Titans is much better. On the road, they're averaging 83 yards rushing per game. At home, 136 yards rushing per game. Home
field means something. I've never – and Shane Steichen was asked that on Wednesday about that, and he said, we've kind of looked into it. It's just hard to know what it is. But they play better at home. They're more effective at home. This will be a really interesting game because the Colts have been better on the road.
Yeah, right. They're both.
What are they, 4-1?
The Titans are 4-1 at home,
right?
And the Colts are 4-1 on the road.
Right. So it's just strange. It's a strange season that way. Why these guys play better on the road, I don't know. They won in Baltimore.
Right.
These guys won. You can say, well, no, they won in Baltimore.
They won that game. It was it was an ugly game, but they won that game.
I'd rather come out of a fist fight, with a win and on my feet.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as people are going to put that, but at the end of sentences, this is who they are, and they've played better away from home.
And it's just, I was looking at something, and I was like, well, the Titans have been so good at home, and so I looked at these splits here. They're averaging 23 points per game at home. On the road, 11.6 points per game for the Titans. For the Colts, they're averaging 26.5 at home and 22 on the road per game. Mm-hmm. So that puts it at a 1-point game. if you go by the averages there, it's crazy.
And that's what Vegas says. It's a Colts are 1-point favorites, and I believe the number is like 42. You're over under for this game. So
that's right on 20, with the averages.
21-20 ball game, 22-21, something in that range. We'll get to our predictions a little bit later, but we'll continue with the offensive and defensive numbers now. The Titans defense has been pretty solid this year. They're top 10 in the league, ranked 10th at allowing 20.4 points per game. The Colts still down near the bottom of the league here, allowing 24.4 points per game. That is 27th in the league, only 5 teams worse. Total defensive yards, Titans are 17th in the league. Colts are 24th in the league. Passing defense, Titans are 19th, Colts 17th, so about the same right there, 220 yards per game given up. Rush defense, Titans 15th, allowing 110 yards per game. Colts 26th in rush defense, and that number, of course, has plummeted with Grover Stewart being out of the lineup. And
is it like 150 yards a game in the 5 without
It's
Grover?
Been bad. It's been really bad.
There was a time earlier this season we were talking about the Colts having a top 10 rush defense, and even a top 5 based on yards per carry. But man, since Grover is good, we saw a little bit regression before Grover went out, but since Grover's been out, it has been really rough.
Yep, and so that it falls to the guys, the backups, who are now getting increased roles. Obviously, for the past 6 weeks, I mean, it's hard to call them backups right now. They're basically starters who've been in there. Whether it's Taven Bryan or Adetomiwa Adebawore, or moving Dayo Odengbo inside, Tyquan Lewis as well. Like Derek Johnson, of course, too. Yes, so there's been a slew of players who have seen a lot more action. And then, of course, when it comes to Derrick Henry, those guys are important, but it goes to the linebackers too. And it's a big Zaire Franklin game, I think. I mean, there's been a lot of big Zaire Franklin games, and he and Buckner teamed up for that big fourth down stop against Derrick Henry that secured the win earlier this year. I think the Colts are going to have to ask a lot of Zaire again this weekend, just because, Grover's not there. Well, you're going to see a little bit more action than you would if he was in the game. So,
and again, as we probably mentioned, Grover comes back next week.
That's right.
He's been in the locker room the last 2 or 3 weeks, I think it is.
I think it's he gets 3 weeks off completely, and then he's been allowed to be in the locker room for 3 weeks of his 6-game suspension.
And I'm sure he'll be in as good a shape as he can be, whatever you can do when you're not playing. But they've missed him, and we talked with Gus Bradley about that. Is you knew he was important. Did you know he was this important? He said, well, sort of.
Yeah. You had an idea.
Yeah.
Like we try to express that somewhat, but at the same time, as when we start expressing how important Grover Stewart is here on a podcast in this type of medium, it always kind of reverts to also DeForest Buckner, because of the impact that he has on a game, and you kind of talk about them in tandem, and I think that's just the natural ebb and flow of this type of medium, like I said. So it might do a little disservice to Grover to try to include always talk about them together. Like he deserves his own real focus about what he is able to do to this defense and able to establish in the run game. And like you said, Gus Bradley knew it. I think his teammates knew it for sure. And if we didn't know before, have
the football layman can now see it.
Yes.
So over the last few weeks.
Yes. Titans are -4 in turnover differential. They have only 8 takeaways and have 12 turnovers. So they don't turn the ball over that much, but they don't take it away all that often either. And the Colts are +2 on the season, have 18 takeaways and 16 turnovers. A few fewer turnovers would be nice, but 18 takeaways is...
No, they had 8 back in 2 games.
Right.
They did. Minshew did.
Right.
So
yes. So
and a couple of Gardner's last couple of interceptions have not been the most timely, but you know what? They're not coming in bunches right now, so it makes a difference.
The one was Josh Downs, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a miscommunication.
I still don't know who that was, because for me, it kind of looked like it was Minshew, but I don't know for sure. And at this point, I think we're past it. So I wasn't asking them in the locker room this week, and that wasn't a big topic of conversation.
Miscommunication.
It was definitely miscommunication. One of them, I thought it was zone coverage, and so I thought Downs sat in the right spot, and Gardner threw it outside, which would have been a man read, I think, following him. But the cornerback on the outside might have just seen it and jumped the route there, and still playing man coverage just stopped his coverage and saw what was happening. It could have been Gardner made the right read, but just was a really good play. It's hard for me to say. It really is.
It was just at that point in the game, we play the if game all the time.
Yeah.
But if the Colts walk away with that one, I feel like without that interception,
it was 17-3.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, they get another score. It was going to be really, really difficult for the Bucs to come back and make that much of a game.
And you know what, Chap? We talked about this last week when you were on the injured reserve yourself here, just kind of rehashing the Patriots game and how kind of skittish Minshew looked in that game. I made the point that I would rather have him be skittish than what he was, and that was throwing passes that he shouldn't. And committing 4 turnovers in back-to-back games. And you can understand how that's kind of what would naturally happen to a quarterback. You're being told you cannot turn the ball over in the manner that you're turning it over. And so your reaction in a game would be to be more apt to run around and try to buy a little bit more time and not fumble the ball. You feel more pressure when it's not quite there. Those are things that if you only have a week or two to try to make adjustments, that's what would happen. You can't just be, boom, perfect right away. That's something that takes an offseason or several weeks to really iron out, or even years of a career to iron out of a system. So like I said, I would rather have him look a little skittish than keep turning the ball over at the rate that he was. Your thoughts on just that opinion about Gardner Minshew and his play?
Yeah, but the only negative is I think the offensive lines played pretty well. with the fact that I think I looked, they've had 6 different combinations with Kelly and Braden Smith and Bernie being out on occasion. But yeah, I think it appeared he was seeing ghosts, I guess. But yeah, I'd rather have him than try to get out there and make plays on the move, which I think he's shown he can do pretty well. But the bottom line is he can't. It's whether it's fair or not, he can't turn the ball over 2 or 3 times a game. This team is not built for that. So I think there is something when it's stressed to you. Don't turn the ball over. Don't turn the ball over. Then that sort of puts a hesitation in your play, which is not what you want from the quarterback.
Yeah, but you want turnovers less, I guess.
Correct.
I think so. Maybe that's something that Colts fans have to live with a little bit.
This is who.
Right, and that's
this is who Minshew is, and this is who they are because that's who Minshew is. You're going to go as far again. You're going to go as far, or not very far, as he allows you to go because that's who he is.
Yeah, Gardner Minshew going to hand the ball off plenty to Zach Moss this week because he's his fantasy running back. So hopefully Zach Moss keeps churning out those yards and touchdowns for Gardner Minshew's sake. Yeah. Let's run down the Titans offense. Will Levis in 5 games here in his rookie year in the NFL has thrown for 1,000 yards, 1,042 specifically, 6 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, and has taken 13 sacks in those 5 games. So you look at some of those numbers overall. 4 of those touchdowns were in the first game.
Right.
So 4 games, only 2 touchdowns in that mix. But 2 interceptions is not bad. But at the same time, you want maybe a little bit fewer than 13 sacks, kind of what you were saying there, Matt. That's something that it's such a tightrope to walk as quarterback in the NFL. Like you say, you definitely don't want your quarterback to commit turnovers, as we were just saying with Gardner Minshew.
Be aggressive.
But you also want him to be aggressive and not take the sacks that he shouldn't. And that's what's so difficult to learn. You have to learn like how fast the NFL game moves, and just and that's something that takes reps, that takes rookies being out there. And like we wanted to see with Anthony Richardson, the Titans are seeing that more from Will Levis, and they're going to be able to take this experience and hopefully, for their sake, they would say hopefully build on it in the future. So that's kind of some of the explanation behind some of those numbers for him. Ryan Tannehill, he has not played all that often recently, and there were rumors that he wanted them to cut him. He denied those rumors, but you can see from his numbers why they moved on from him. As in 6 games, he threw for 1,100 yards, just 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and 19 sacks. So hey, maybe Will Levis is better than Ryan Tannehill in terms of taking sacks, for crying out loud. Maybe it's just that offensive line is not the best pass protecting offensive line.
It just feels to me like, other than the obviously the interceptions and touchdowns reversed there, the numbers don't really feel all that different.
No, they don't.
To me, it's a quarterback who doesn't throw for a ton of yards,
right,
who gets sacked a considerable amount of times.
So from that perspective, you might as well have your rookie in there and see what you got and get him some reps and
play the guy that you hope, if you're the Titans, you hope that 2 or 3 years down the road this will really pay off for him.
Derrick Henry, 176 carries on the year, 739 yards. That's 4.2 yards per carry this year. Also has 26 catches for 167 yards. And that's like, Derrick Henry is not the 2,000-yard back I think that he was a couple years ago.
He can still hurt you.
Yeah, he can.
That's the problem.
He absolutely can.
Literally.
Yes, physically actually hurt you. Yeah. At wide receiver, DeAndre Hopkins has 45 catches for nearly 700 yards, 4 touchdowns, and also has 10 receptions for 20-plus yards. He definitely had a couple of those against the Colts when he was here, if I remember correctly. Former IU wide receiver Nick Westbrook-Akine, 24 catches, 281 yards, 3 touchdowns, has 5 receptions of 20-plus yards. And that is something that Levis can do, is he can beat you deep. He's got the arm to put it anywhere on the field at any time. So you have to be wary of that if you're the Colts secondary.
I mean, I've talked a lot on this podcast about big plays. You guys know I like my explosive play
Darn
stat.
right.
I do it every week. But the Colts have been pretty exceptional in that category. Now it's slowed down a little bit the last couple of weeks. They didn't do a whole ton against the Patriots. It was, but they've got 41 explosive plays on the season. The Titans have 40. So they can, with Levis in there especially, they can make those big plays.
You know who I actually liked? This is kind of going back to explosive plays in the game against Tampa Bay, who didn't make explosive plays but still was a contributor, was Alec Pierce. I thought he caught a couple good short passes, which is not, like we've said, not his forte. Like the Colts have needed to get him in the offense more because they just cannot go deep right now, with him at least. They have not been able to find Alec Pierce deep for whatever reason, but they need to get him more involved in the game. Chap, I thought they did that pretty well in last week's game against the Buccaneers. They got him a couple of those short passes.
Well, then they made a big point that he had the one big breakup on an interception.
Yeah, that too.
Which is easy. And it's things like that maybe we're going to think about from Pierce this year, which is unfortunate for him, is there's a pass breakup. There's some DPIs he's drawing. I think he's played well. It's just right now the function of this offense is run the ball, and it's Pittman and Josh Downs. And oh, by the way, let's get a couple of plays from Pierce. But he'll have a game this year, maybe this week, I don't know, where he has 4 catches for 90 yards and one over the top. But I think he's played well. I think he to a lesser degree than Pittman, has been impacted by their offensive approach, where whether they can't get the ball to him or they don't get the ball to him, I don't think they dial up a lot of big plays. I just don't. But I'm not ready to say Pierce is any kind of a bust at all.
No, me neither.
I think he's got a very valuable part, and his role's been even lessened by Josh Downs' emergence. And
right.
That kid, he had 13, which was strange. He had 13 targets last week, only 5 catches. That's normally not what he does. He's much more efficient.
Right.
But he still gives you plays, but it'd be really nice to see Pierce have that one game where they really get him going.
Reward him a little bit because I saw a stat I think a week or two ago that said Alec Pierce had run more distance on the field than any other receiver.
It's an incredible number.
Yeah, like it's some crazy number of yards or miles, or if it was at that point that he had run. So yeah, get him the ball, dadgummit. Give him some reward for that.
I agree with Chap. I know that the numbers aren't necessarily there, but I think he has been a pretty decent part of the offense as far as how they've used him, or at least tried to get the ball to him.
He's been kind of at fault because of the perception of being that early pick. Was it 2 years ago? And this would be the year that he emerges. Well, not to compare him at all, but Reggie Wayne didn't really emerge until like year 3.
Right.
And then the fact that you add Josh Downs, who's done, I'm sure, a lot more than anyone expected. And right now, this pecking order of Pittman, Downs, and Pierce is working with the running game. And they'll sprinkle in an occasional 30-yard pass to Mo Ali Cox out of 4th and 1. But I think this is his role now, I think. So, and again, I'm fine with it.
You saw that play coming. That was a fun one. You saw Mo just kind of slip out and ooh, they're going to Mo.
Those have got to be the hardest ones to catch.
Oh yeah,
because you're saying get here because he didn't put a lot of zip on the ball.
Nope, it's like boo.
Gardner wanted. It's also hard to throw because you also know the guy is wide open and you don't want to put too much zip on it. You don't want to throw it over his head. So he just kind of lofted the ball up there a little bit.
And what's funny, and it was a cool side note that they had Steichen mic'd up, and when they call the play, they say, okay, Zaire personnel. So it was for him.
Yeah,
and go back and look at what he did on the play, and he did nothing.
Right.
he did. There was no way to block because no one got through to him. But it's just really cool when they do that. And of all the people to use it with, he's outstanding. Where he said, remember, they went to him and he wanted them to throw in the ball in the flats.
Yeah,
said, I've got speed in the flats.
Leak out to the flat.
Yeah, maybe later. This time you're going to block here. But it was crazy that we talked about the chunk plays. Their 2 biggest plays on offense last week were the 4th and 1s.
Yep.
To 24 to Pittman and 30 to Mo Ali Cox. So however you can get it done. But I do wish they had more explosive in their game plan, but that's just not the way this roster's built.
I think it was our friend Joel A. Erickson of the Indy Star who said that he wants to see the effectiveness of Zaire Franklin in a Spider 2 wide banana halfback or fullback role, and I second that entirely.
Absolutely, 100%.
That'd be fantastic. Returning to the Titans offense, Chris Moore, 12 catches, wide receiver, 280 yards, has 6 catches of 20-plus yards. So they have 3 wide receivers who have 5+ catches of 20 yards or more. So it's not just one guy that can beat you deep there too. They have a bunch of guys who can slip out behind the secondary,
which makes the offensive numbers just strange.
It does.
What's not working?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like there's just no consistency with it. Like they'll find it every once in a while, but there's no set. It seems like there's no set, consistent plan that works to get that. Like it's like, oh, we got it. Hey, woo.
And then we don't.
Yeah, and it's worked more often at home. So take that for what it's worth. Tight end Okonkwo, 39 catches, 251 yards, and as Matt notes, the Titans have 40 explosive plays, and the Colts have 41 explosive plays. So that's pretty much dead even right there between those two teams. On defense, Azeez Al-Shaair has 102 total tackles. That leads the team. Jack Gibbons at linebacker, 68. Amani Hooker at safety has 67. And our good old friend Danico Autry leads them with 10 sacks and also has 10 tackles for loss.
What a career he's had.
He's had a great career. He really has. Like you're not going to put him up in the lines of Donnell Hunter and T.J. Watt, but dadgummit, you want Danico Autry on your team.
You go into a season, you say, well, we're going to get 10 sacks from Danico.
Yep.
And tackles for losses. We'll take that.
Mm-hmm. Jeffrey Simmons has 5.5 sacks, 10 tackles for loss on the interior. Harold Landry, 5 sacks rather, and 6 tackles for loss. The Colts, as we look ahead, there are only 2 teams remaining, as Matt notes here, on the Colts schedule with a winning record. Those are the Steelers and the Texans. There are 6 games left, and so from what I've kind of gathered, if the Colts go 4-2 down the stretch, they have somewhere around a 70 or 80% chance of making the playoffs. If they go 5-1, then it's all the way up to like 98, 99. That's like a shoe-in.
Like that 98% chance a few years ago?
Exactly. Like that 98% chance a few years ago where you just had to win one of your last 2 games. Thanks for bringing that up, chap.
That's what we're here for.
Exactly. So it starts this weekend with winning the games that you're supposed to. And this one might be tougher than you think because, like we've noted several times here, the Titans play much, much better at home than they do on the road. So I think this is going to be more difficult than it was the first time out against the Titans. But if you want to take advantage of what is in front of you, then it starts this weekend. It does, and doing what you're supposed to do, and that's beat teams that you're supposed to beat. A team that's 4-7 is still a team that you're supposed to beat. That has not been particularly impressive on offense. That is still kind of breaking in a rookie quarterback. Like this is still a team that the Colts are supposed to beat, and to be road favorites, as I said, this is just kind of the first step in the rest of the season. That now that you're in line for the playoffs, you control your own destiny there.
And how do you handle the success?
Yep.
All of a sudden, you're not just climbing up. You're there, and now it's yours to protect or reinforce that position. And you talk to players in the locker room, and they point it back to Steichen about how he sort of kept them, focused on it. It's week to week to week, and fans don't understand how the 7-day life cycle of an NFL player. It just is. You play on Sunday, and then you have to put that game behind you so that loss doesn't impact the next loss. And he's done, to this point, a pretty darn good job of doing this. And if this thing continues, it'll get stronger. But all the talk about Coach of the Year, D'Amico Ryans, and D'Amico Ryans, I'm sorry,
right,
and what he's done. Well, Steichen's done as much with less. They've
without his rookie quarterback.
They've had their top picks, and this is what the Colts have had to deal with. So, very impressive. But again, how do you deal with it? Now all of a sudden you're getting a lot of praise heaped on you,
right?
And can you it's easy to be confrontational when you're losing and all this. When you're winning and people are telling you how good you are, how do you handle that?
The Colts, quick injury update for both teams. Did not practice on Wednesday. Juju Brent still not on injured reserve. Still,
this will be 5 weeks.
This will be 5 weeks that Juju Brent hasn't even practiced. For the love, Isaiah McKenzie with a toe injury, and obviously Jonathan Taylor. Limited in practice on Wednesday. DeForest Buckner with a shoulder. Full practice. Ryan Kelly had a concussion that went the wrong way at the end of last week, and he didn't play. And to Wesley French's credit, stepped in and did a really good job.
Yeah, he had to go against Vita Vea. I mean,
yeah, right?
Not something you want to have to deal with.
But I thought he was fantastic. And I thought the running game, they held blocks really well because Taylor, it seemed like a really patient running attack from Taylor, like you mentioned, the one where he just found space there. And that's because everyone in front of him is holding their blocks for a couple seconds while he finds that little crease to sneak through 17 yards. Anyway, Drew Ogletree with a foot practiced, and Bernard Ryman with a knee practiced as well.
Our friend Brett Bensley put an update from Thursday's practice. No Juju Brents again.
No surprise.
Ryan Kelly's out there. We'll see. Tomorrow's a big day on whether he can pass the independent. McKenzie's back. DeForest Buckner was limited, which is you get used to it.
Yeah.
And get used to Wednesday walkthroughs.
Yes.
Because right now they're so much more concerned about resting and recouping bodies as opposed to.
So they want to be as fresh as they can be
Correct.
for Sunday.
Correct.
Yeah. I think, we're going to see that, if not every week down the stretch, most of the weeks down the stretch. And, hey, that's just fine. Make it a mental day.
No matter whether they win or lose on that walkthrough or not?
I don't think so. I don't think they're going to have every Wednesday off. I mean, they get Mondays off anyway.
Right.
So, but I think it'll be his feel for the team. And so much of that's what a coach does. And they've got that, I can't remember what they call it, an executive council, players council. Mm-hmm. And I think he taps into the, Buckner and Zaire and Ryan Kelly. What do you guys need? Because Steichen knows he'll get good feedback from the players about what do you guys need at practice? Do you need to go hard? Do you need us to pull back? And listen to your players.
There's some value in having players who know what they need too, like in that sense.
They're not going to take advantage of it.
Right. Yeah. For the Titans, limited on Wednesday was wide receiver Treylon Burks with a concussion, linebacker Luke Gifford with a shin injury, and quarterback Will Levis an ankle injury. So that's something to at least watch the rest of the week, even though he was just limited. So I don't anticipate that'll be significant for the rest of this week. You can follow us on Twitter at Colts Blue Zone for those types of notes throughout the week. Full practice on Wednesday was safety Terrell Edmonds with a shoulder injury. So 1:00 game, Colts in Tennessee to visit the Titans. Gary McGinn airs on CBS 4 if you're in Central Indiana. It's a 42-point line. It's a 1-point Colts favorite. They're anticipating Vegas is a 21-20, 22-21 type ball game right there. I'll go first since I've let you guys go first the past couple weeks. Darn right, I'm going to take over this time, and then we'll go to Matt and Chap to wrap things up. I still do like the Colts in this game. I was wrong last week. I talked all about how you weren't here for a chat. I thought that the matchups were terrible for the Colts. I thought that they couldn't run the ball. They ran the ball. I thought that they couldn't stop the wide receivers. They didn't do much to stop Mike Evans, but at the same time, Chris Godwin didn't go off. So they did a lot better than I thought they would. And so I'll be the first to admit that I was wrong about what happened last week. I thought that it was a masterfully executed game plan. Like, it was both the coach's game plan that did it well to find the gaps against the Buccaneers defense and to not let the receivers kill you. Because you had a better pass rush than I anticipated, I should say. And then, anyway, moving on to this week. We don't need to talk about last week anymore, especially since I was so terribly wrong. We can forget about that immediately. But this week, I do like the Colts in this game. I'm going to take them 27-24 in Tennessee. I don't anticipate them again blowing anybody out, but I think they found a little something last week. Hopefully that gives them, they would hope to give them a little bit of momentum on offense to get back to what they were doing on offense and not the poor offensive showing, to be honest, that we saw against the Panthers and the Patriots, albeit in wins. So got some momentum. You keep some momentum, and you beat the Titans and improve to 7-5 on the year. Matt, what do you think?
I tell you, I know the Colts have been good on the road, but the home split for the Titans, they've been so good at home. I'm going to go ahead and go with the Titans here, 26-20. They put on a late field goal. Colts can't quite get that touchdown that they need to recover there at the end.
All right, Chap, what do you think?
I'll go 23-20 Colts. I think, again, to me, they're in the find-a-way mode. And I'm going to be piling on Minshew the rest of the season. As long as the quarterback doesn't do something egregious, I think they've got enough to find a way. Again, Matt Gay kicking, I don't know, whatever the math is, maybe 3 field goals. Mm-hmm. What was it, a 58-yarder he glanced off the right?
Yeah.
I think it would have been good from 70.
It would have been good from 70. Like, it hit almost halfway up that upright.
Unbelievable. But his misses they've been like long ones.
Yep.
But
his only other 50-yard miss, I think, was the blocked one.
Right.
That
right.
Myles Garrett was just a Superman.
I just think they find a way. I like the way they're playing. It's not flashy. It's not going to be flashy. And we'll be talking about, boy, they could have done something better, this, that, and the other. But I think they're finding ways. I think the defense will limit Henry enough. Mm-hmm. But yeah, 23-20, good guys.
Yeah, I'm glad that they're giving us something to nitpick. It gives us something to talk about here, and not that we need help talking about things. We can rabbit trail with the best of them and go down different paths, and who knows what is at the end of the day what's going to come out of your mouth. You can guarantee a couple things. You can guarantee me talking about Syracuse And that's just one of the many things here on the Colts Blue Zone podcast, obviously. But that'll wrap us up. We are very much out of time because we talked about quite a bit this week. So appreciate you all listening and tuning in. Do encourage you to subscribe. Get this delivered to your podcast listening device as soon as we drop. For Matt Adams at Statomatti on Twitter, Mike Chappell at mchappell51. You can read all his work online, fox59.com, cbs4indy.com as well. I'm Dave Griffiths at DaveG_sports. We'll see you next week on the Colts Blue Zone podcast.